Hello and welcome to today's webcast on our series Sustainability Watch. I'm very pleased to have you all on this call, and we're going to talk about business and society, a sustainable and inclusive world. Before we get started, I would like to introduce our esteemed panelists. And first, Dr. Annette Schiller. She is the board secretary and group head of ethics and compliance and enterprise risk management Achievable, a Swiss multinational manufacturer of flavors, fragrances, and an active beauty ingredients. During her 10-year tenure at Givaudan, Annette has created the ethics and compliance, the enterprise risk management, and the data protection functions, and been a member of the Givaudan's sustainability steering team. Hello and welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Hello.
Hello. And also I would like to say welcome to Naomi Walker. She leads the property design team at Lloyds Banking Group, developing the approach to sustainability, cost and colleague experience for the group's estate of 1,800 buildings and 65,000 colleagues. Following good progress to achieve the bank's carbon target, Naomi's current focus is on announcing ambitious new carbon targets for the bank's own operations. Naomi has worked at Lloyds Bank Group for 7 years in a variety of roles, including transformation, strategy, HR, risk management, and governance. Welcome to you, Naomi.
Thanks, Uwe. Delighted to be here.
Great, and I'm very pleased to have you both with us. And you know, normally, very often in Sustainability Watch, we have panelists who are specialists in sustainability. But today, we have two very experienced businesswomen who have worked in many areas in the business already. So that's great, and I hope we will have a very interactive session. You can ask questions at any point in time. For that, use please the box at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. We will be watching that and trying to respond to it in a timely fashion, sometimes immediately and sometimes as the discussion progresses. There will be a short presentation. You can download that presentation in the box next to that share your questions or comments box on the bottom of the screen. And if you want to use the full screen, on the top there are 4 arrows. If you click on them, you will see the slides in full size. And if you click on those 4 arrows again, you're back to this view that you see at the moment. We will record the session, and at the end we will upload the session so that you can actually share that with your colleagues. It will be then available on demand. At the end of the program today, we will ask you for feedback, and I would urge you to just spend the 2 minutes on that feedback. It would be really useful for us to improve our service to you. You can earn professional development credits, CPD and CPE. You have to provide your full name and email address, and then during the call you have to click 3 times on the pop-ups that occur, and you have to stay online for the entire webcast. I would like to say, for those who watch that on demand, that is of course only a possibility in the live webcast. The webcast is brought to you by the Global Sustainability Center of the Conference Board, and I would like to point out that we strive to support all our member companies to be able to create long-term value and a positive impact, and to do that by integrating sustainability fully in their operations and their strategy. We are trying to give you timely and thought-provoking and relevant research, and we're guided by the UN Sustainable Development Goals and, of course, the global standards and frameworks for corporate behavior. We intend to be fact-based and independent, and I hope that we can be of service to all of you. So much for the center. So let's get to our theme of today, business and society. I would like to share a little bit of the thinking that we're currently developing with members around the question, living in a time of crisis where many things are highlighted and better visible. It's also a time for reflection, and many people have started doing so. And we have developed 5 elements of a transformation for a sustainable and inclusive world. And I will touch upon them very, very briefly and then leave our esteemed panel to talk about it in much more practical terms. It is important in what we do to adopt a long-term perspective, and a lot of people have started to realize that chasing quarterly results will not necessarily lead to a very sustainable, profitable growth. So long-term perspective in all things that you do is very important. Also, to make sustainability an integral part of your decision making. It's not enough to just write nice sustainability reports. You have to really, when you make major capital investments or discuss the launch of a new product or decide which suppliers you want to work with, in all these things you have to make sustainable evaluation an integral part. Quite difficult for some of us is to embrace transparency in a full way. I completely understand that there are many issues associated with this, but in this day and age, it is important that you go beyond what has been sort of the practice in the past. People are asking lots of questions about how your code of conduct, how you engage in your value chain, and so on and so forth. And the more transparent you are, the more rewarding it will be in the long-term perspective. But also be a voice for change, because it is not enough to just comply. You have to actually actively help making the positive changes that are required. And also, it is now very clear, especially in the situation we're in now, you cannot do this on your own. You have to collaborate with customers, with suppliers, with peers, and also NGOs. So this is something that we see as very important elements for business and society in the future. But before I go on and on about this, I would like to hand over to Annette to talk to us about how she sees these points, and especially Annette, we hear a lot about the word purpose. And how do you see purpose playing out in business and society?
Thank you very much, Uwe, for this. And indeed, purpose is something that, if you look at all these five points that you have here, is actually something that brings all these together. To me, I think purpose has a number of meanings, and I think I would like to talk about 3. The first one is purpose is, in general, what gives somebody or a person or a government a meaning. It is also something that guides action. So it's kind of the guiding star, the North Star, whatever you hear it called. And it's also something that draws people together and gathers them. So people can gather around a purpose. So this is basically what I see as a purpose. And this is also how we at Givaudan have talked about purpose. And I don't know, I suppose you would like to go on a bit about how we do purpose at Givaudan?
Please do.
Thank you. Perhaps for those of you, since perhaps not everybody knows who we are, so even though most of you will have enjoyed probably our products already today or will be enjoying them, we are a Swiss-based taste, well-being, fragrance and beauty company, which is basically very much B2B. We are very truly global, with about 16,000 employees in about 180 locations. And we are a very old company as well. So we have been, or some of our predecessors have been in existence for over 250 years now. And so in a sense, we had already a bit of a strong sense of togetherness, but we wanted to take it a bit further. And so we did last year in 2019 develop a purpose, and we basically did it also to with either these 5 points that you have here, and also the 3 items that I talked about in mind. So for us, the purpose is not only the statement that comes out in the end, and I will show you in a minute what it is, it's also the process of getting there. And so for us, actually, it was very much also the way of getting there away than only the end point, even though, of course, we now have a purpose statement. So what we did in the first phase was actually we developed, or we said we developed our purpose. We kind of rediscovered our purpose, because purpose is something that you should have for all your actions anyway. And we did it in a very inclusive way. So we involved about 500 people or so. So we involved a lot of our own employees. We also talked with people in our supply chain, with our customers, to ensure that we really develop what is right for us, for people, for the planet, for our performance, for the communities we work with. We also took key inputs such as the Sustainable Development Goals to say, what do they have to tell us, and to come up with this: why do we do what we do, and then what is the purpose? So after having said all this, what is it that we came up with? This is the purpose of Givaudan that we developed and that we published late in 2019. And if you read it: creating for happier, healthier lives with love for nature, let's imagine together. It will probably not win the Snappiness Award, but it is really what is part of us, and it resonates very well with us, with our customers, with our suppliers, with our communities that we work with, because it also takes into account what is it that we're doing. So we create fragrances, fragrance, active beauty ingredients, nutrition ingredients, and we want people to have happier and healthier lives because of that. We do this with our love for nature. That means that we will respect nature, and we also show the joy and love that we have. And then the second part, the let's imagine together, is the part that shows that we are creative, and we have to create with other people. So we are not alone in this. And if you think back to the five points that you raised earlier, it basically ticks also this point of acknowledging that nobody is an island, and that we have to all develop things together and work together. So after having created this, we didn't want it to just be a nice thing on a poster, but we did something that might not even be textbook purpose, but which is something that brings it even more to life for Givaudan. We put 4 pillars under our purpose with ambition-like targets. Again, it's probably not a purpose like you read in the textbook, but this is what works for us, what excites the company behind it. You can see on the right hand, which are the SDGs where we think we can do the best or make the most impact from where we stand. And you can also see the 4 pillars that we've created for a purpose. Creation, which is what we need to do and what we need to do to help our customers create the products that consumers need, with a love for nature, with a love for our people, and with a love for also our communities. And the last one that is also something that we wanted to say is we have also articulated our intention to become a certified B Corporation, and we are starting this path now. And then, once you have a purpose, it's all very nice, but I said that, the purpose also needs to be your guiding star and needs to guide your actions and gather people around it. And this is why we've also, when we just developed our new 5-year strategy, we've said it: committed to growth with purpose. So obviously that's only a header, and you can write lots of things in a headline of a strategy. But if you see, we have our strategy in the middle, and I'm not going to go into this because that's obviously very much to our company. But as you can see on the sides, we have the themes of our purpose that are actually the themes of the enablers for our strategies: creation, people, nature, and communities. And this way, we ensure that actually what we have, our purpose, is really guiding our strategic acting, and is then also exciting people, to work for it and to incorporate it into their daily activities. And this is something we've been doing, and we saw actually that it was very good to have the purpose already during the last crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, because it really told us what should we be doing. We should be good for our people. So we worked a lot on, for instance, the health and wellness, not only physical but also mental health and wellness of our people. We looked after the communities in which we work. So, for instance, as a fragrance manufacturer, we have it's easy for us to manufacture disinfectants. So we did a lot of this. Obviously, we as much as we could, and we could for the most part, we continue to create so that consumers can find the products that they need, the essential products like um, personal care, health care, detergents, etc. And we try to see that nature, which during the pandemic was not so much talked about, but did not take too much of a hit. So this is a bit, in a nutshell, what's a purpose in general and what I think purpose means for Givaudan and also has meant for us during the crisis.
Excellent, Annette. Thank you. And the minute you mentioned your intention to go for B Corp, I knew questions would arise. And Brian is asking, what sustainability index certifies B corporations?
As far as I understand, it's not an index. B Corporation is a type of company, and there is a B Builders movement. So there's the B Lab and B Builders movement that administer that, and if you can Google it, but this is actually not an index like FTSE for Good or Dow Jones Sustainability Index or something. That's something a bit specific or a bit different, and it comes from the US, where you can be a B corporation, which means that you need to accord basically greater weight to stakeholders other than your shareholders.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. By the way, we have a report on the website of the conference board which talks about what it takes to become a B corporation. So I will try to make sure that we pass on that link. So for the time, thank you so much, Annette. And if the oh no, hang on, there is a second question. So let's get to that one as well. How do you report your contributions to the SDGs? Who holds your company accountable for these? What financial advantages or access does this create for Givaudan? That's 3 questions. So
let's try to get them all. So how do we report? We report, first of all, we have a sustainability report, which has an SDG, it's matched to the SDGs. Our reporting standard is the GRI reporting standard. We also more and more integrate into what we call the integrated annual report, so that we have strategy, business operations, and sustainable reporting all in one place. We usually mark what the SDG is that we are addressing. And obviously, as all of you know, the SDGs are not really directly addressed to companies. They are addressed actually to states. But as a company, we thought, which are the SDGs that we can actually have a positive impact on? So that was the first question. Who holds us accountable? Well, as I said, we are a B2B company. So the very first people to hold us accountable are our customers. We work with lots of customers over the world, some of the very big ones, some of the smaller ones. And a lot of our customers are now just demanding that we comply with certain sustainability standards. They audit us. We are a member of something called the Social and Ethical Data Exchange, SEDEX, which has also an auditing system. So we do that. And on the shareholder side, well, our shareholders, they look into what we write in our annual report, in the sustainability report, in engagement sessions, etc. So they will ask us also, what are you doing here? What do you do there? So that was the second question. What was the third question? I'm sorry, I missed that.
What the financial advantages doing that are for the advantages, financial advantages?
I'm not sure there's so much, we're looking at so much at it from a financial advantage. A, it's the right thing to do, and B, it's also something that is for us table stakes. So the financial advantage is not having a disadvantage almost. So I don't think with doing this, I mean, in most industries anyway, I'm not sure that you can really have a big advantage, perhaps a bit of a first mover advantage, but especially in our industry, It is just something you have to do. So it's not something where you think, oh, if I do this, I have an even bigger advantage. I think it's just something in our company, it's the right thing to do. In our industry, it's the right thing to do. If you think about it, we source especially natural raw materials from all corners of the world. So there are lots of things to look at. There are lots of potential problems. So this is why communities and nature are two of our pillars. And it's not for a specific financial gain, although there are always correlations showing actually whatever you want them to show, including that companies that are more sustainable allegedly also perform better on the stock market. Although these are correlations, and there are probably other factors contributing to that.
Absolutely, yeah, no, for sure. But one thing we can say for sure, if you do that, you're well prepared for the future, and you're not performing worse than anybody else. That's for sure. That's the claim that that we outperform. All these claims are interesting, but it's important. There's definitely no financial disadvantage. That's proven many times over. Yeah, so very clear. Um, uh, there is a third question, but we'll come back to that because it's for both of you, I think. So I would like to give some space to also Naomi, if I may. Naomi, I talked about the long-term perspective beforehand, and that quarterly results are not necessarily leading to a really sustainable business. How do you see that from your company perspective?
Sure. Okay. I will start by just saying a couple of words on Lloyds Banking Group for those of you in the audience that don't know us. So we're the UK's largest retail and commercial bank, very much UK focused, and we have around about 26 million customers. So we provide retail banking products, insurance, wealth products, and also we work with businesses on lending too. So a diverse business, and has a very, very big impact within the UK. So our success is very much intertwined with how the UK economy is doing. And in fact, our purpose is to help Britain prosper. So with all of that said, I suppose you introduced the Uwe and talked about the scale of our company in this country. We have an extraordinarily large branch network with lots of different brands and a number of head office buildings as well. So our scale in the UK is really quite big. And for my role, that means it is increasingly important to take a long-term perspective. So when we make decisions, we need to think beyond the next quarter or the next year and make sure we have a plan, a target to guide us over the next 10 years, for instance, which is the sort of cycle we plan our location strategies, particularly for our offices, against. If I talk about before COVID-19, around about half of our carbon emissions were driven by gas consumption, the direct emissions of our buildings, so heating all of those buildings. And for me, up in Scotland, the heating needs to be on quite a long time of the year as well. So we want to move away from doing that actually and being so dependent on gas to heat our estate. If you think about that in the long-term perspective, if we make a decision that we want to reduce our carbon consumption, those boilers have a 10 to 15 year life. So we need to make that decision today, and then as those boilers need replacing, they need to be brought up to standard with where we want to be in the long term. So a very practical example, but hopefully just illustrates that need to make decisions now which drive your actions over the next 10 or 15 years, and which I think is equally applicable when we're thinking about products that we might develop as a company. If we have a new mortgage product that encourages kind of energy efficient green homes, for instance, it will take us some time to actually make that diffuse into the market as people come to us. So these decisions that we need to take rely on a very clear long-term strategy to actually make any tangible difference.
Then I have a question for both of you, which comes from Tara. How do you see your company's role in developing future capabilities for the company and society? Sustainability sits underneath that, according to Tara. Naomi, do you want to?
So if I've understood this, is this around the skills and the capabilities that we would need to lead businesses in a sustainable and inclusive way into the future? Would that be your interpretation, Uwe? Maybe
That,
Tara
that's
can let
yeah.
us know if we've understood it
Yes,
correctly.
she says yes.
She says.
Okay, okay, good. Yeah, I think I'm not going to be able to talk about this from a very expert perspective because it sits in a different area from me, but I'll give you my perspective on it. We are continually thinking about how the shape of our business needs to change and the skills that we need to develop in order to equip us effectively for the future. And we have a huge responsibility to do that, actually. So as an example, in banking, one of the major considerations is how customer behaviour changes and people perhaps move from visiting physical branches to wanting to deal with us digitally. And we do a lot of work thinking about how we reskill and redeploy the colleagues that are impacted by that shift in behaviours, which is perhaps one relevant example. We're also working in my team quite a lot across the different functions that we have. So our retail business developing products, our commercial relationship managers who are going out to their clients and talking about helping them with their lending needs and how they become a more sustainable business as well. And we are developing quite a lot more kind of educational materials to help people understand their own carbon footprint and the actions that they take and how that impacts on a broader perspective, which I think will then help that translate into them being able to do their jobs effectively with their clients and customers.
Yeah, that's clear. Annette, how would you answer that question from Tara?
So also, if I've understood it correctly, so it's about the capabilities that we develop for business and society. And I think I would answer, again, a bit like Naomi, I'm not part of the sustainability management team, so they will have their own strategy. But what we're doing is actually we're doing, I think, the development on many different levels. So obviously we do have our sustainability team, which will then develop specific capabilities in one thing, in I don't know, greenhouse gas or in reporting or in whatever it might be. However, we also think that sustainability is something that is a part of everybody's work and everybody. So especially through our purpose, but also throughout the training, we are actually going out to all people in our company and not only in the company, and thinking with them, what can they do in their roles and their lives to be part of our purpose, which is actually to be basically more sustainable and to have a sustainable business in society. We also talking a lot with our suppliers and our customers about what we can do together. Things like, I don't know, having what we call responsible sourcing programs, so that we see that up till the natural raw materials, where do we source them from, how are the people that are sourcing them for us living, etc. So I think it's on various levels and it's to different degrees. So we do have the specialists that need to understand the system, but we also have to have every employee and the people that are partners we work with understand what it means to be a force for good in society and to be part of our business purpose journey.
Yeah, that's okay. Naomi, we have a question for you. I'm very glad, dear audience, keep them coming. It's so much better that way. Does Lloyd's have sustainability requirements as precursors for investment or a designated growth track for businesses as a requirement for financing?
Yeah, very good question, which I'm going to give a mixed answer to. So bear with me, and if I need to find some more information out and come back to you, I will do. A couple of things I would point to. We have a climate risk, I suppose, kind of that we manage as a group, and we think about how that impacts across all of our business, including our commercial bank, for instance, when we're lending to customers. So we've changed our credit policies around the businesses to which we would lend, and we're also looking to make changes to our kind of investment funds. So it's actually been in the news in the last couple of weeks that we're withdrawing funding from a number of companies that we do not believe meet our ESG criteria, and that's to the tune of over £400 million. So significant change in the way that we're investing funding. The other thing I'd call out is we do have, and we're working on updated versions of these. We've got, as part of our Helping Britain Prosper plan, we have a series of measures as a business, and one of those is around the kind of renewable energy projects that we fund as well. So in 2020, we had a target to invest in renewable energy to the tune of powering 5 million homes. So some quite significant investment there. But yeah, this is absolutely a very hot topic for banks, because what we do with in terms of my role, what we do with our own footprint, our own buildings and our own colleagues is important. But if we are meanwhile still investing in oil and gas, then we're not really helping to solve the problem. So it's certainly something we're continuing to improve in.
Yeah, I must say I'm very pleased that it finally got to the financing sector, that it's not about carbon footprint of employees alone, but where put other people's money where your mouth is. That's probably there is a question in the making, but whilst we see that, I would like to come to something in the discussion which is about collaboration. I mentioned that we cannot achieve these things on our own. Annette, do you have an example of where this has already been sort of working for you?
Well, as I said before, we are active in a number of associations and organisms within our industry that are all towards a similar prospect. I talked about SEDEX before, which is not exactly an organism, but still it allows customers and us to look at ourselves and our suppliers. We look at I always get this wrong, WBCSD.
World Business Council for Sustainable Development.
Sustainable Development, exactly. So we're part of that. We're part of other organizations like AIM Progress. So we are trying to get as much together with other or in platforms where we can talk with other companies, either in the same sector or in different sectors. Obviously, we all have to respect any antitrust requirements of all those things. But yes, we do work quite a lot together with these. I also said that we work together. We have lots of programs with the communities we work with. So for our sourcing, that is another type of collaboration. But we are engaged in quite a lot of collaboration on different levels.
You just made me sentimental. I was one of the founding members of AIM Progress, so that's a while ago. We have another question. Has Givaudan also considered its market risk as a B2B company? Do you see opportunities to expand or adjust your portfolio or your market to build a more resilient long-term business? Can you share any interesting generic examples?
That's an interesting one. I mean, I don't know whether the person has seen, our performance over the past 20 years. So I think there's always a risk for a B2B company. But if we try to get into B2C, if that's what is meant by that, then we would be becoming competitors to our own customers. I'm not sure that would be such a good idea. So it's certainly not an idea that I have heard of as being retained. There is some sort of market risk, but that people may not like fragrances or flavors anymore. But so far, we have certainly not tried to get into a B2C space, and I don't think it's something that we should be doing. But again, I don't know whether I've understood the question correctly. So yes, we are a B2B company, and a B2B company has market risk, but I don't know, there are lots of B2B companies, and so far we have survived for, as I say, 250 years as a B2B company. This is probably not the first risk I would be thinking about, but perhaps we can have a clarification of the question so that I can get a better.
I see that the person who asked the question is typing, so we'll probably get it. I'm not sure that it meant the B2C bit, but more apply your capabilities to other fields in the B2B arena. But we'll wait for the question to come. You both already touched on your employees, but I would like to come back to that because I hang on, I have to go a little bit up. No, not B2C. Do you see some of your customers as being in a risky market? For example, steel production may be disrupted due to the environmental impact. So if you provide fuel to steel, this would be risky. Do you see similar industry subject to eco-driven disruption? That's
Okay. So, I mean, there's always risk of disruption by new entrants or by by our competitors being able to have, better ways of making fragrances or flavors. But frankly, our business is a fairly complex one, so we need to be able to manage, a large number of different ingredients. And if you think about, each flavor or fragrance has something, probably upwards of 50 or 100 ingredients. And I think to be able to manage this complexity would probably be already a fairly good barrier to entry. So from a sustainability side, so the example of not providing fuel to I don't know to companies, we have in the past 5 years and even more with the strategy, we are going much more into natural flavors and fragrances. So, a bit away from wholly synthetic flavors and fragrances, which might have been one risk areas from a sustainability point of view that end consumers might prefer naturally created or natural ingredients in their fragrances, flavors, active beauty, etc. ingredients to that. And we're looking at these types of risks.
maybe, Annette, you could say a word about how you look at these types of risks. What methodology you apply to, for example, do you use scenario planning for things like that?
Well, we do use a fairly classic risk assessment methodologies to see, how big is the risk, what would happen if yes. I mean, we do use this. I don't know how much into detail people would like me to go because that's obviously company strategy, and as you can see from our strategy, we are moving forwards towards more natural ingredients in our flavors and fragrances and more nutritional ingredients and integrated solutions there.
Cara, who asked the question, says, Annette, thank you. So obviously you were able to clarify the point. Great. Again, to the audience, please keep the questions coming because that helps us to really answer what's on your mind. There is another one. Are there technological risks that could climb the complexity barrier? Robots come to mind. Yeah.
Is that to me or to Naomi or to both of us?
I think it's to you, but because you said, this is a nice barrier of entry, managing the complexity.
Well, it's not the only one. I think it's making flavors and fragrances that people want to have or an active ingredients. There's always a risk of that. I mean, if you look into our strategy and it's publicly available, we are into digitization and automation ourselves. So of course there's always a potential disruption risk, but even there, I mean, yes, we're looking into this and we are active in that space ourselves. So I think every business probably of everybody listening could be disrupted by somebody having a nifty new idea technologically, but even then that person would have to have also the business knowledge going with this and the knowledge of the market. But of course, I mean, technology is always a risk and we take it seriously.
Yeah, no, it's clear. So let's come back to what I was starting to talk about, the employee element of this. You both touched upon it already, but Naomi, it is difficult to get communication throughout the organization and get, especially when I look at how distributed you are across the UK. So to reach everybody, what are your experiences? How do you rally people around the sustainability agenda?
Sure. Thanks, Uwe. And I think there's three things I would talk about here. So education. enablement, and experimentation. And if I take each one in turn, if you think yourself around when you needed to change behaviours and do something different, you first of all need to know that there's a problem. So we're doing a lot with our colleagues across Lloyds Banking Group on the scale of the climate crisis and what our strategy is to tackle that and the steps that we are taking. And I mentioned, I think earlier in the call, my team are currently focused on helping people to understand their own carbon footprint outside of work so they can see how they contribute to that problem, but also the steps that they can take to make a change. From a kind of enablement perspective, there's something about making it really easy for people to make the right choice and putting barriers in the way of things that are not going to help us to achieve what we want. I'm not sure whether anybody's read the book Nudge, but that has some great behavioural psychology type tips in it. And I've seen us doing some of that where I work. So one example would be we've rolled out water bottles and keep cups to all our colleagues, and we've just taken the plastic cups out of the buildings. Now we've had to put them back in for COVID, but when we do go back and we can go back to using our own cups again, then that reduced. It was part of a massive program we did last year, which ultimately reduced our single-use plastics by 42 million pieces. So just physically taking it away and enabling somebody to make a different choice, do something different, made a big difference. And experimenting, I talked about last. I think there's two different ways this can work. So first of all, you can test changes that you might want to make with teams. We've recently done a pilot around the paper that we use in our branch estate. About half of our waste now is paper. And we were looking at using more of a recycled paper that was not quite as thick to reduce the waste weight that we were getting. And by including a small number of branches in those pilots, we get people really excited about them being part of shaping the change and them giving their feedback too, which is great. And I think that very active experimenting also encourages people to make their own tests and try something new themselves. So keen to encourage that curiosity and the challenge in colleagues. And I think this needs to be to feel like a kind of a bottom-up movement, as well as there being top-down messages, so our colleagues feel part of shaping how this works in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a very important aspect. Annette, how do you experience that in your part of the world?
So we also do similar things to what Naomi was saying. So when Naomi was talking about her example of taking the plastic cups away, I was reminded, I mean, in our cafeteria before COVID, of course, it all changed again with COVID. We had, the plates to take away were on loan, and you had to pay a deposit, and you got it back when you brought the plate back for cleaning and recycling. So that was similar. What we do again, and what we did, for instance, also during the COVID crisis, we also experiment, or we do things pilot with our employees in smaller groups, and then we also encourage the employees to then basically, according to the trainers concept, to escalate things into their own organizations. So, for instance, during the COVID crisis, we had a lot about happier, healthier work at home, and also for our productions workers on site. And so, we started also with some piloting groups, and we tweaked a bit here or there the message, but we also then escalated this and cascaded this to more employees. So to really engage a group of employees, but also give them agency so that they think they can also do something by themselves, and they can then carry the message forward. And this is also what we're planning, doing already, and planning more for the purpose. How do we embed it? How does everybody find their own role in this, and what purpose means for them? This will also be again in different areas, in different pillars, through different groups, and it starts with with smaller groups to pilot ideas, and then we roll it out further.
Excellent. Yeah. Another element I still would like to touch upon as well was I mentioned the need to be more transparent. And that might feel counterintuitive because we do all this reporting already, and actually we're struggling with all these reporting standards, and then all the rating agencies, and they want more information and all of that. Aren't we transparent enough? And I once coined the phrase to say, be transparent until it really feels uncomfortable. Now, I know that we live in different legal entities, and there are some limitations to what you can do, but it feels that the society we live in expects from us not the glossy stories and everything that's wonderful, but also to admit to failure and talk about why that failure happened and what we're planning to do to avoid it in the future. How do you see that? Would you agree to that sentiment, Naomi? How do you see it?
Talking from a personal perspective, I absolutely agree, and it's something my team have tried to do a bit more. We've been testing out and keeping a bit of a log of all the things we've messed up recently, so we can be a bit more, just transparent and learn from those failures rather than feeling like there's blame or judgment attached to them. I think from an organisational level, it still feels quite uncomfortable to come out and say, yeah, we really messed this up and here's what we're doing about it. But do you have an example of kind of increasing transparency that I will share as it relates to my role? So I've been to talk to a number of different teams within the organisation about the work that my team does recently. And as we've talked about what our carbon footprint is and what we're doing about it, the question all of my team have been asked is, what's happened because of COVID? Haven't we just moved the problem to everybody's houses because we're all working from home? And actually, we did some work over the summer proactively to look into what the carbon impact of home working is. So it's not something that's required of us. It's not a mandatory disclosure. It's a scope 3 emissions, so indirect. It's actually part of the commuting emissions, which is a bit of a bizarre place for it. But we worked with EcoAct and NatWest, and we sponsored a kind of a round table and a white paper on how those could be calculated. And this is the first time this year in the next annual report that we'll be reporting our carbon emissions from home working. So a good example of where we've said we've got an impact here that we're not currently disclosing transparently. We need to go and understand what that impact is and make that transparent to people for the future.
Are you giving us a sneak preview of what the results are?
No, the white paper is available though. So if anybody wants to go and find it, it should give a methodology for any organisation to go and calculate that.
Yeah, no, it's I think as always with these full life cycle analysis, it's complex and depends on the conditions.
Totally.
For example, if lots of your employees commute for a long distance, it's a straightforward thing that it's easy.
Talking generally, I mean, what we've seen is our carbon emissions have gone down this year as a result of COVID. Overall, because we're not using the offices quite as much. We had reduced branch opening hours for a little while, and the business travel and commuting has really business travel stopped and commuting has way reduced. But we have seen people using lighting and heating in their homes, so we think that the reduction is about 4 or 5-fold compared to the increase. So overall, it's a good thing, given those travel emissions.
Thank you. And Annette, how do you see this this transparency?
Yes, I can respond to that. I wanted to first respond to Naomi because I think it's a very good idea to try this. I'm not the sustainability person, so I don't know whether we have done similar studies to see how COVID has impacted. But given that we had our facilities, our production facilities open for the main part, I'm not sure that the home working employees would have made such a difference. But again, we haven't seen that. I think what we would say to transparency is, sorry, I had 2 messages pop up here. We have started reporting or giving ourselves targets and reporting against those targets, in 2009 or even earlier, or 10 already. And so obviously there are years when you say, I don't know, the wastewater reduction target or whatever it might be, and you can see that it is actually not going down. So, and then, since we have reported 1 year, then obviously we need to report the next year, and then, people can see where we messed up or didn't mess up, or that, I don't know, we used more carbon than we wanted or whatever. And so we do have these publicly communicated targets. And I think by setting these targets and setting them once and publicly, I think that forces a company and will force us also to be transparent about them. And I think this B Corp journey, which is actually a quite, a fairly long journey. I think we're looking at, 3 to 5 years or whatever it is. So that will also just require us to be more transparent. But I think, if you say, okay, what is it that I want to reach? And then you say, okay, this is the number I want to reach. And then it's easy to see, have I reached the number? Or have we reached the number? Or have we not? And we've been doing this for some time. And again, I think also being in the B2B business, our customers, they look at what we're doing as well and say, well, why, have you not done this? Why have you done that? So I think we are probably a bit more accustomed to scrutiny, to have to be transparent. I think for us the problem will always be, when people try to get at things, to try to get at our trade secrets through this, because that's also obviously a risk that comes with, people demanding more transparency. Not for the sake of transparency, but for the sake of a competitive advantage. And this is where we would draw the line.
That's very clear. But you see, let me be a bit more provocative then. We have seen a number of companies making really nice claims in their reports, and they show some numbers and all of that, what we just discussed. But at the same time, they are in industry associations or in lobby groups that actually advocate different things. So there is a public stance you take, and there's a non-public stance you at least support, and that is the sort of transparency people are looking at now as well. And how do you see that going forward?
I don't know. Would you have an example for this?
Oh yeah, there is a whole organization who looks at the lobbying behavior of companies, and they see that they might pledge a carbon target, and at the same time they are in a lobby organization that tries to influence legislation to keep the carbon targets, the legal carbon targets, low, high as it were.
In our company, I mean, if I talk on a company perspective, I don't think we have done this as far as I know. So, we have our own carbon, I mean, to stay with your example, we have our own carbon targets that we say, and, whether or not the industry associations we're part of, do other targets or lobby for carbon targets being higher, we want to be carbon neutral by 2040 and carbon positive by 2050, including scope 3, because scope 1 and 2 are fairly easy. It's usually the supply chain upwards and downwards. So that is the target we have publicly announced. And I mean, if I speak now personally, I don't think how it could be in our interest, given that we have announced this target, publicly and are reporting against it, to be lobbying for any such laws as you were just suggesting. So perhaps I have, I have just not experienced anything like that. But I think the public setting of targets is probably what is the point that is the best, that you then have to report against them.
We have a question exactly not to the point I made, but to the target setting, and it just disappeared because another question has popped up. Let me just go down. This is it's a question between setting a target that can be achieved versus a target that is meaningful, or I guess meant very ambitious.
I can go first on this one if you like.
Yeah,
please do.
Yep.
Okay. So the carbon target that we have currently published for Lloyds Banking Group, we have achieved. So we had set ourselves the target to reduce our carbon emissions by 60% by 2030. Now we achieved that 11 years early, which to me suggests it was not challenging enough. It did require us to totally change our energy consumption to renewable. It did kind of result from great reductions in business travel across the organisation. But if we were able to do that so much earlier than planned, then that suggests to me we weren't stretching enough for ourselves. And I think, well, as we work through what our new targets or pledges are going to be to replace that, that's one of the conversations we've been having. This needs to be something that is backed by investment. It's not just us offsetting and paying to get rid of the problem. It actually has to involve tangible action to reduce carbon emissions. And it needs to be kind of involving a significant programme of works to be credible. And I think we are actually seeing that scrutiny really step up around that area as well. So if I talk from the UK, for example, Boris Johnson yesterday unveiled his 10-point plan for the UK around sustainability, which has been kind of perceived as a step in the right direction, but has been quite widely criticised for a lack of tangible funding set against it to drive that action.
Excellent. By the way, we have an addition to that question, and I think it's for you, Annette. Do your targets include suppliers, vendors, and if not, how to address this then in the future?
Yeah, so
in your report, sorry.
Yeah, okay. Well, perhaps I should say, so I'm not in sustainability, but still, I think the first question here, how do you balance between meaningful and achievable targets? I think this is part of the oversight of first the executive committee and then the board of directors. I think for our industry, it is a fiercely competitive industry. So if somebody comes out with something, the next person comes out with something even better and all that. So I think we also have this competitive landscape that would prevent us from coming out with targets that are just nice to have. So I think that are two parts in the governance. One is the official governance, who needs to show whether a target is achievable and also not only achievable but also meaningful. But it's also everybody wants to have the best targets in the industry, and so this is where there's a bit of race. Unfortunately, it's a race to the top and not to the bottom. So that's the first part, and then the add-on. Well, as I said already, in for the greenhouse gas emission targets, the CO2 targets, we do have targets also for our so-called scope 3, which does include our suppliers and vendors and also downstream. And so the point is, and again, I'm not the person who is leading this program, but we have programs where we talk with our suppliers and where we look especially in, I don't know, in raw materials, again, as an example, how things are grown, water usage or usage of greenhouses or something. So it is by collaboration, coming back over to your whatever point 5 it was on your agenda. But yes, some of these will include targets that are also including the supply chain, especially on greenhouse gas emissions.
I just looked at the clock, and my goodness, we had such a good conversation going. I didn't realize that we're running out of time. So thank you both, Annette and Naomi, for answering diligently all the questions that have been raised. It was a pleasure having you. And I would like to say to everybody, the next upcoming webcast in the series will be what the China's recovery package means for global businesses. There are some very interesting findings from our China Center. And please now, when we finish, give us the feedback so that we can learn what we've done well and what else we can do to improve our webcast program and any other things that you might require. You can send me an email if you have more questions for Annette or Naomi, and we will try to answer them as quickly as we can. Thank you so much. You just click there and you get to the feedback around. Thank you and goodbye, and stay safe.